Welcome back, coders, to another video. Today we're going to be taking a new look at the ROG Ally, a device that I've owned now for almost 6 months. We're approaching that pretty rapidly. So we're starting to see some update reviews that are going around, as well as a couple other devices that are in the competitive market of handheld PCs, which is a really exciting market, if I'm being honest. I have loved my ROG Ally since I got it. I've had very, very little issues, even though I would say Reddit would assume that it's probably the worst device of all time. I don't know. Anyway, besides that though, and I've been lucky enough to have had very little issues, and so I've been playing a bunch of games, including this game, Like a Dragon Ishin, that just came to Game Pass not too long ago. And when I was playing around with it, and this new update that just came to the ROG Ally, which is one of the best updates yet, I found some interesting factors that have come into play. First off, when we're talking about this game, it already runs particularly well if you're plugged in with 30 watts. It's no issue. You're going to be 50 to 60 FPS at all times. That's no big deal. You'll notice though that there's a new addition here in the ROG Ally's command center that you can add. So if you go into Armory Crate SE and add this to your command center, you can quickly switch on and off the CPU boost. Now you'll notice there's not much of a difference here because we're using most of our power for the GPU, because this is a GPU demanding game, not a CPU heavy game. So we leave it off. And the reason why we're doing that is because this allows us to kind of have a sort of auto TDP mode. If you're familiar with handheld PCs, everything is based upon the amount of power you're giving to the APU and how it distributes it on the fly. ROG Ally has made a lot of updates and made this a lot more efficient since it first came out, but they never really had an auto TDP. So you were set to your three basic settings. I have a manual 7 watt, there's a standard 10 watt, 15 watt, and 30 watt. And you'll notice as I switch those, it dramatically alters the performance that we see on screen. So you're wondering, how do we get it to auto TDP to where it needs to? Well, right now I currently have it set up to do that. By keeping CPU boost off, you'll notice that the APU wattage does not go over its max too often unless it's in that initial ramp down period. So one thing I'm going to show you though is that we can now adjust our graphics settings and get a real-time estimate for how much power that actually demands. So real quick, I'm gonna go ahead and lower it to 720p without changing any settings. These are all on high. And I'm gonna go ahead and see in real time, in order for us to get even above 60 FPS, we need less wattage. So let's go ahead and cap. Oops, I did the wrong, no, that's the right way thing. We're gonna go ahead and cap our a refresh rate. That's the wrong thing, graphics. FPS, we're going to cap that to 60 just to start with. This is our first least aggressive move that we're going to make. Oop, I hope that it saved. It did. Okay, so we're at 60 FPS max, and now this is limiting us to 60 FPS, which is great. And as you can see already, our APU watt has already come down significantly. I'm going to move that up into the upper right. Significantly to 16 watts. That's all we're using at 720p. So by cutting the resolution in half, we cut our watt usage in close to half. Not quite, but pretty close to half of the needed watts. Now this is a pretty low demanding area, so it might raise a little bit from time to time. Like if we walk through here, you're gonna see we're up to 27 watts, 24 watts. This is just preventing it. It's automatically raising and lowering the power level to ensure that we never run below that FPS line. So you can see we've boosted up to 22 to 30 watts, but the moment we stop being in this heavy area, it brings itself right back down. This is great for when you're on battery and you really don't want to, like, you know, absolutely kill your battery immediately. So I highly recommend this being your way of playing going forward, especially if you're not one who likes to mess with settings a lot. Now I don't mind messing with settings, but that's pretty cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you one other thing you can do if you really want to save some power. So let's go to settings. Let's try to get this running close to 10 watts, which you can do by just setting the power level, and it will automatically kind of adjust the speed of the game. But it's better if we can do it from the top down rather than the bottom up. The amount of power giving it to the APU versus the amount of graphics need necessary being brought down. So we're going to bring it down to 30 FPS which should bring us down very healthily to about 11 watts. And as you can see, 720p at 11 watts. It may look a little soft on your screen, and you'll notice though that it'll still ramp up when it needs extra juice, but for the most part, we're 11 to 12 watts. And if we were looking at the APU usage, we'd only be at like 15 to 16 watts, which is really good. Ooh, we just messed this guy up. Even in the cinematic area, we're only at 12 or 11 watts of total APU power. And this is what I've been talking about, guys. Oh, I tried to dodge that. Ooh. He keeps hitting me. There we go. So even through that entire fight, we never really broke 11 or 12 watts of power being necessary. And I think that that is quite impressive right there, as you can see. We're sitting right around 11 watts at a stable 30 FPS, and you can play this on the go for a long time. And one of the things that I was doing with one of my other recommendations when I went over this in the past, I'm not even sure I released that video actually, but this my settings that I mentioned, which were the best, are 720p with high graphics, so you're not taking a big hit, and FSR, I believe, unbalanced. And the reason for that is it creates a really nice clean image even on the screen at close ranges without sacrificing a lot, and it allows us to enjoy much lower wattage. We could run this at 10 watts for 99% of the time without any issues. The other aspect that would happen though occasionally is that we would run into cutscenes that would run below what our goal is. So even over here, we're in really low demanding areas. We're at 10 watts at a stable 30 FPS and not really having any issues. So anyway, that was one little factor that I wanted to talk about. So let's go ahead and, oh gosh, we gotta get through this real quick, and then we can, I guess I can just quit. That's another thing that they added in the last few rounds of updates was this end task. Let's go ahead and end that task. And then go into, if it doesn't freak out, apparently we're gonna have to close it first. See, this is good. You're getting to see this in real time. Turn that off for now. We're gonna close out of this. Try it again. Armory Crate SE. Now, there was just recently an update that may have made things a little less stable than I was expecting, but Armor Crate SE got a big update that also unlocked gyro controls, which is kind of cool. So right here, you can calibrate all of your controls as normal, but even more interesting is now there's a gyro control calibration. So I've already calibrated. Now, the thing is that I still haven't figured out how to get this working in games that don't default support it, but it is a nice addition, and I know a lot of people have been clamoring for it, so I'm excited to see how that goes. The other aspect that we have is right here. This is what I wanted to show you. So I wanted to show you how you add this, and maybe we'll move it. See right here what we can do. What can we remove? Let's remove that. We're going to remove show desktop, remove CPU boost, and we're going to go ahead and you can see you can select from all these different things. So they haven't added a ton of new things, but it is nice that they now have CPU boost. And the reason why CPU boost is so great is that it allows us to control our auto TDP. So turn off CPU boost and go ahead and just mess with graphics settings. Find a place where it runs at a good level. And if you're really picky and you just want to make sure that you're not running any sort of extra power or anything like that, you can always go in there and manually set the TDP. But I would suggest that this is the easiest way to get yourself up and running without having any sort of issues. And if you are ever having challenges where for some reason performance seems really low in comparison, oh, that's why it was causing issues, toggle it back on. That's the great thing. It used to be a very cumbersome process. You could do this with the ROG Ally in the past, but it was really cumbersome, and now it's not. So highly recommend it. A couple other tips that I'm going to give you is that run everything with RIS on. This is one of the better features. Maybe I can show you an example while I have you here. Liza P is a great running game, so let's go ahead and check out Liza P real quick. Runs extremely well on this chipset. and honestly is gorgeous and very fun. Hard as hell. I'm at the hardest boss that I've ever faced, so hopefully someday I will get through it. Let's go ahead and let this load up though. Running everything at max 30 to 25 watts, no matter whether or not I'm on battery or off battery, and just making sure that auto TDP type function is running. So I got CPU boost off right here, AMD RIS on. We can put our real-time. Oh, and this is the other aspect that they added, and I really love this. They have a minimal real-time monitor, which is great for if you just want battery life up there. A row real-time monitor. This is a long time coming, a request. And a square real-time monitor. And you'll notice that they now have an FPS line graph, which I really appreciate. And I feel like not enough games really take advantage of that. So as you can see, even as this is loading up, it doesn't need all of its 30 watts of power when I have CPU boost off. If CPU boost is on during this time, it would use all 30 watts pretty much all the time. It would sometimes not go, but you're gonna notice that CPU clock is way higher, especially when we're loading things. Okay, that's fine. I don't really care if it closed weird. So I'll just let that happen while it's loading. It may load slightly faster, but you're gonna notice the wattage goes through the roof at that point, and it's really unnecessary. So we're suddenly at 27 watts when, oops, that was not what I wanted to do. I'm gonna turn CPU boost off. And now we drop right back down to a very healthy 16 watts, 13 watts, where we can manage that a lot easier. So I don't remember what I have my FPS locked to. It might be at 30. And that is definitely, yes, I have it at 30. So you're going to already see the benefits of using that auto TDP function. And we are at 1080p. So, I mean, I could even lower this even further and probably get this thing to run exceptionally well below 10 watts. Let's see if we can get it below 10 watts. So right there, we're at 10 watts, running at 720p. Game looks pretty good, even at 10 watts, which is awesome. Even at 720p, I mean, running at 10 watts. And we're gonna get excellent battery life that way. With the 40 watt hour battery, we'll probably get 2 hours, 2.5 hours of battery life out of this game, which is pretty great. And you can go ahead and switch it to 1080p, and you're still gonna use a similar amount of power, just a couple more watts to get it to that 30 FPS line. This game looks extremely clean on the screen, but I did want to show you, and maybe I can get to a slightly brighter area. I think that I know how to right now. So we're just going to stay here. Actually, I know where I can go. We're going to go ahead and transfer over to a brighter area. Hotel Krat. And just so I can show you that, and then we'll take it up to 60 FPS or even unlocked, and you'll see it will use all of the wattage it needs in order to get those higher frame rates. And you really can get some excellent frame rates plugged in with this game, up to 80 FPS, 70 to 80 FPS, which is awesome in most areas. So right here, you can see we're using a little bit more wattage in here. I think it's a more demanding area. Yep, 13 to 14 watts. So this is a more demanding area, which is kind of cool. It's also brighter, so we can see a little bit better. So let's go ahead and just stand right here so we can get a nice comparison, but still brought down to 12 watts. And we're going to go into the settings, go to the graphics, and any game that has this frame rate limiter is going to be excellent for this. So let's go ahead and just do unlimited for now. And right there, you're going to see immediately it shoots up and starts boosting and everything goes really well. I'm also going to show you what the difference between CPU boost on and off is in most games. So right here, we're boosting like crazy. You can see 95% GPU usage, 23% on the CPU. Really, all CPU boost will do is add to that CPU boosted section, so that CPU section. So if we do this, we may get a couple extra megahertz out of the CPU, which is what it looks like it's doing, but we're not really seeing a difference in performance, maybe a couple FPS. And so this is why it's not worth it. And there might be some stability benefits, but we're running at 78, 79 FPS, and our temps are suddenly much higher. So let's go ahead and turn that off and just let this thing settle a bit. As you can see, not much of a difference at all. In fact, I would call it within the margin of error. It may be the same. In general, you're going to see better temps with CPU boost off as well. The less likely jolt up to 95, but right now we are throttling a bit because we're at 95. So let's see if it brings that APU wattage down. I really do hate that it boosts the first like 2 to 5 minutes up to 42 to 52 watts on power, which is just a bizarre thing for this thing to do. It doesn't benefit much. Everything over 30 watts is kind of just icing on the cake. There we go. We brought it back down to 30 watts, and suddenly it's still running really well, but not at 95 Celsius, which is awesome. So 30 watts, still getting 74 to 75. We're talking about 3 FPS benefit, maybe in a good case. But we got that CPU boost off, and there's no reason to turn it on. So that is one aspect that we've shown you, that we can show you. And we'll go ahead and just test this and bring it down to 720p, and I bet you we get significantly better performance. Oh my goodness, this game runs well on this device. 112 FPS in here, and I will say Hotel Krat is definitely more demanding than most of the game, which is really cool. Let's go ahead and set it down to that 30 FPS limit. I mean, you could still get good performance on 60 FPS or good battery life on 60 FPS in this game too. Right here, you're seeing we're down to 12 watts of power again, just like that at 720p, 11 watts, and we probably could do this at set 1080p and do just fine as well. We're just going to be at 14 watts, 13 watts. So it's just a really, really well optimized game. And I gotta say, this device continues to impress me, continues to make me really love it. Let's just see what happens. We set this to 60. Well, there's even a 40 FPS option, which I feel like most games need to take advantage of. Let's see if we can get this to run at a reasonable wattage. It's still boosting a bit, so give it a second. So we can auto TDP. Anytime you switch it, sometimes it will boost up, which is really annoying and dumb, but it is a thing it does. Let's see if we can do that. So Asus, if you are listening, one thing that I do wish you would stop is that auto boost at the first 2 to 5 minutes of every game, or when you switch TDPs. I don't think it's necessary. It doesn't make a much of a better improvement, and I feel like it would be better for the long-term life expectancy of this device if we could get rid of that. Absolutely crushing this guy. I mean, yeah, he's a moron. Okay, so I don't know if we're gonna get any performance benefits here at 30 watts, but that is something to keep in mind. Is it, we're gonna stick at 30 watts for 60 FPS. So if you really do want a very consistent frame rate, this is a great way to do it, but you can always get above that with the same 30 watt output. So I'd recommend, if you're trying to save some battery, maybe drop to 40 FPS. Let's try that. Thanks for sitting with me while I ramble a bit. Still get a lot of that smoothness and reaction speed, but look at the wattage difference. 18 watts to run at 40 FPS, 17 watts to run at 40 FPS versus 30 to run at 60 FPS. It's just amazing the difference that you can get. So we'll do a little sprint into this town. 15 watts, even out here, it's less demanding. So you can really run this game at low TDPs for extended period of times with really smooth graphics, with great looking visuals at 1080p. And again, this is not at 720p, where we can get even better performance for less TDP. And so this is a really good option if you guys are looking for that great experience on the ROG Ally for all your games. Test it out, see what works, what looks good enough for you. I'm definitely a 1080p gamer, so I try to get things running at 60 FPS at 1080p and still being able to get a lot of performance out of it. But I do still go down to 720p if I'm going to be away from the charger for a while. So hopefully this was informative. This new update is fantastic. If you're considering a portable PC, I have to put my vote in for the ROG Ally. I don't think the Legion Go is quite there on a software side. And while the Steam Deck is a great device, and software wise, it's probably the most mature of all of them, I would argue that the performance is going to hurt it a lot more in the coming years. And there isn't any sort of imminent release that's going to dramatically improve that. So I'd recommend Asus ROG Ally, especially for the price point it comes in at. Just a little bit more money to invest buy one on Best Buy that is refurbished or repackaged, because man, you can get those for $5.99, which is incredible. So thanks again. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications, and as always, stay classy, coders.